Gracias. Muy buenos días. Bienvenidos a Puno.
Today I am in Puno, Peru,
a city of 140,000.
on the west banks of Lake Titicaca. This morning we're going to be heading out to the Uros Islands.
Straddling the border between the South American countries of Peru and Bolivia is Lake Titicaca. If you are traveling from Cuzco or Arequipa to La Paz, this is a great place to spend a few days exploring. Considered to be the highest commercially navigable lake in the world at 12,507 feet above sea level. It has an interesting history and offers beautifully unique landscapes. Not to mention it also breaks up the border crossing process if you plan to visit islands in both countries. The two main draws of the lake are the Uros Islands and their people on the Peruvian side, and the Isla del Sol, Island of the Sun, on the Bolivian side, though areas surrounding the lake on either side offer up historical sites such as Tiwanaku and Sillustani. The Uros Islands are a wholly unique place. Each island is made by the Uru people.
This is just one of 90 floating islands that the Euro people have made out here in the middle of Lake Titicaca on the Peruvian side. There's even more on the Bolivian side, but I'm going to do that in a few days. But this is pretty cool. You can kind of jump on it and it's really squishy. You can feel the water below you kind of rising and falling like the waves.
The buoyant totara reeds are bundled and used to make the dwellings, boats, and the islands themselves. Each island can accommodate 2 to 10 families depending on its size. Since each island is man-made and floating in the lake, they need to be attached by ropes to eucalyptus poles to keep them in place, which also means they can be moved if the need arises. In some spots there are open holes into the water.
¿Sí?
Ah. Waliki!
Esta es la planta acuática, la totora, el junco. Vamos a compartir, ¿ya?
Muchísimas gracias.
Sabor más o menos a la lechuga,
Pretty good.
palitos. Aquí están los señores pescando, la niña que está yendo a su escuela, las montañas, el cóndor, puma, la serpiente. Esto en aquí representa un matrimonio. Al medio están los novios, alrededor los padrinos o los invitados. Representa un matrimonio.
The Uru people predate Incan civilization and may very well be the descendants of the first settlers to the Altiplano some 3,700 years ago. With our cultural lesson coming to an end, Totoro models were passed around and put on display. We were even shown inside a typical Totoro dwelling.
Gracias.
Esta es la casa del presidente.
Sí, es mi casa.
Ah, el presidente.
Before we boarded the boats to the other islands, the locals sang songs of the Uros and friendship.
Ay 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 kilata, ukam saphetu. Ay 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 kuyaka, ukam saphetu. Dame la mano, mi amigo será. Dame la mano, querida amiga. Dame la mano.
Gracias, Presidente. Right now for 10 soles, we are going with El Presidente to the second island on his Mercedes-Benz float.
If you hadn't noticed, the boats are basically 2 normal-sized boats used as pontoons to make one larger boat.
¿Tienes cambio para 30?
Dos. Ahorita le debo 10, ¿no?
Ah, 10. 10 para gracias, señor. Ah, gracias, señor. So on our little presidential yacht there, we took about a 15 or 20 minute boat ride from the first island to the actual capital of the Uros. And since there's 90 islands, this is the one where there's going to be all the trinkets and stuff, I'm sure. One of the really cool things about these islands, and something that has actually happened before, is if there is infighting between some of the groups or tribes here, the reeds are easy to cut and they just push them off and they don't have to deal with people anymore. And even though these people live in reed huts on reed islands, they have electricity, they have solar panels that control the lights.
Although it's not required for any official reasons, it's still cool to get a Uros Islands passport stamp.
So on every island they have these little lookout towers. You can probably see a few behind me over there, but I'm standing on one now, and this is actually to communicate back and forth between the islands because they don't have a telephone system here. So they can shout to each other, they can signal to each other. It's pretty cool, and they're actually pretty sturdy because they're really planted into these islands here. I think they probably go down into the water, into the base.
After wandering around the capital island of the Uros a little longer, we head back to our tour boat and out onto open water toward the island of Taquile. Taquile is a small island located 45 kilometers from Puno by boat. The island is very long and thin, only measuring about 5.5 kilometers long and 1.6 kilometers wide. It is heavily terraced, so there are no motor vehicles, so walking is the primary mode of transportation. Only recently open to tourism, locals here continue to live a pretty traditional lifestyle. There's a native population of about 2,200 Taquileños who speak the Puno dialect of Quechua, a pre-Spanish language of the region. We made a stop in the town square for a little while to see how the locals entertain themselves and to look at the shops full of handmade goods, which are regarded as some of the best in Peru. Upon leaving the main town square, we found ourselves winding down the cobblestone path through the terraces. Even though Titicaca is only a lake, it almost feels like you're in the middle of an ocean. But if it's a clear day and you have a long lens, you can see mountains in Bolivia at a distance. Only about 40,000 tourists a year make their way to the banks of Taquile, averaging a little over 100 visitors a day. On Taquile, the people are really friendly, and sometimes the kids will follow you down the path to talk and play. The last stop of the day before returning to Puno is lunch, with an amazing view. When I arrived, the meal hasn't quite started yet, but a local is demonstrating how to make a traditional natural shampoo. This is done by crushing some of the island's indigenous plants into a paste. This can also be used as an all-purpose cleaner. For lunch, we have some really delicious trout with rice, potatoes, and tomatoes. Traditional handmade knitwear is passed around the table to explain its uses and illustrate their craftsmanship. On Taquile, roles have been reversed, and knitting is exclusively performed by the men. The women spin and dye the wool and weave the wide belts worn by community members. Once full on the local cuisine, we follow the path back to the water's edge and back to Puno, where I have a ride to the pre-Incan cemetery of Sillustani booked for later in the day.
So sorry for what was probably a pretty quick change from Lake Titicaca. Here right now I am at Sillustani, which is a burial complex for pre-Inca and Inca burial tombs. That's about 40 minutes away from Puno by bus, and it's actually snowing here, which our guide said is pretty rare. Kind of see it. I can't really catch any of it, but yeah, it's definitely snowing.
Just a short distance from Lake Titicaca, Sillustani's ruins litter the banks and hills surrounding Lake Umayo. The tower-like structures called chupas are the remnants of the Quenya people, whom were the Aymara people conquered by the Incas by the end of the 1400s. Once built to house the remnants of noble families, many of the chupas have been dynamited by grave robbers over the years, while others were left unfinished. Though not intended to mummify the bodies, the closed-off dry environment kept them for centuries. The openings at the bottom of the chupa only face the east, where it is thought the sun was reborn by Pachamama or Mother Earth each day. Stone chupas are found in many places around the Altiplano, but Sillustani stands as the best preserved example still in existence. Again, on our way back to Puno, we stop for some traditional foods.
Oruko, muy parecido a la papa. This is like a potato. This is a clay, and this is ripe potatoes.
So on our way back from Sillustani, we stopped at this little house here where there is llamas and alpacas outside to take pictures with, and they've actually got some samples of, I think this is pan de quinoa, which is quinoa bread, and some Andean cheese. They had some potatoes, which were really good, and some other things that I haven't tried yet, and I'm gonna try it. Hola. So the quinoa bread and the cheese is a really, really good treat.
Alpaca wool is a highly prized fiber for being soft, light, and providing insulation in cool temperatures and breathability at high ones. Alpacas can be sheared once a year for this high-quality wool. Unfortunately, most of the footage that I had for the border crossing between Peru and Bolivia and Copacabana, which is where you take the ferry to the Isla del Sol, has been lost because it was stolen in Bali, which is a story for another time. But the island is absolutely beautiful. It is hard to walk because it is completely terraced, so you do run out of breath pretty easily. I would highly suggest taking a day or two to go trek the island. There's a lot of Incan ruins. It is a little bit more expensive than the mainland. It was $27 a night to stay here, but if I could do it again, I would definitely stay a few more nights. I made sure to get up early so that I could catch the sunrise before I set off for the Temple of the Sun, which is on the south side of the island. The roughly 45-minute walk in the morning air was refreshing, and we were also able to get there before any of the morning tour boats from Copacabana arrived. Just one of 80 Incan remnants on the island, the temple complex is small, but it has a great view just off the water. As the Incan story goes, after a great flood, the area surrounding Lake Titicaca was plunged into darkness. After some time, the god Viracocha rose from the depths of the lake and commanded the sun to rise, and also created the first Incas, Manco Capac and Mama Occhio, whom you can see statues of as you arrive guarding the original Incan steps. It's fascinating to just walk through the ruins and imagine how it was planned, constructed, and what ceremonies happened here for hundreds of years. Maybe this was once a vibrantly colorful space. Now we only see the exposed brick and wonder what it might have looked like, as with most ruins around the world.
Wow.
Before leaving the island, make sure to get to the highest point to enjoy the view, a nice meal, of course an Inca Cola, and an amazing sunset. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it and think I deserve your subscription, please click the subscribe button below, along with the bell icon to be notified of all my new videos. This video has not been sponsored, but I'll leave a link in the description below to my website and my Teespring page. So if you'd like to go over there and check out some of the designs that I put on t-shirts and sweatshirts, feel free to go check those out and help support the channel. Thanks again for watching this video, and never stop adventuring.